Hey, it's Evan here, and I just got done reading. Actually, I didn't just get done reading. I read this a little while ago, but I got done reading this book for the second time. That's how good this book is. This is Hard Times Create Strong Men by a RIP to this man, like this Canadian legend, Stefan Aarnio from Manitoba. I'm from British Columbia myself, but currently I'm out in. I'm not really in British Columbia right now. As you can see, I'm in Mexico, but I've read this book a couple times, and whoa. Steph is a student of a few other mentors who I've been following for a few years as well, and he's used their examples inside of this book. This book is absolutely crazy. You can get a bit more in depth on Steph, and one of the best things to see about the author Stefan Aarnio, and he just passed away last year, so I think it was like May of 2020 is when he passed away. So RIP to this awesome guy. But this book, if you are a male under the age of 35, you need to pick this book up. Because we're heading into some really dark times and weak times coming up. And we're going to be needing a lot of people with a strong mentality going forward because things are about to get quite a bit weird. And say hello to Setya. Setya down there. But I just want to go over 5 big takeaways from this book. Really good resource to check out, Steph, if you're curious about the author, Stefan Aarnio, is just type into either YouTube or Google or whatever search engine that you're using, DuckDuckGo, I don't really care. Type in Stefan Aarnio, Logan Paul, and he was on Logan Paul's podcast, I think back in like 2019 or something like that. And he had a pretty good showing on Logan Paul's podcast. So yeah, enough of all this sort of stuff. Let's get into the really good nitpicks in here. And 5, I can't even speak properly, but these are 5 takeaways from Stefan Aarnio's book, Hard Times Create Strong Men. And I'll see you inside my computer. Awesome. So let's dive into my computer right now and have a look. I've broken up this book review into 4 separate parts. And that's pretty much what this book is. The only thing I'm leaving out is the introduction, which is right at the beginning, which I think is incredibly valuable. And I don't think you should skip out on that as well. Inside of each of these different, these 4 parts that I'm going to be talking about, I'm going to be mentioning only 3 chapters inside of each of those 4 parts. Those are 3 of my more favorite chapters. But honestly, the whole book is full of nuggets, and I highly recommend that you read the whole book because the whole book is incredibly valuable, be it if you're man, woman, doesn't really matter. So let's get started with part number 1, which is money and work. So my 3 favorite chapters from this, number 1 is making the leap from good to great. There's so many different quotes in here from legendary rock stars, Gene Simmons, as well as Dave Grohl from the Foo Fighters. And this really goes in and explains how to perfect your craft as a man, and how to become obsessed with what what you love to do. And there's so many great examples that Steph brings on how to go from being just overall, just being average, just being good, to being great at what you do. And one of the best things that's in there is from Dave Grohl, from when he broke his leg during a concert, and he said that he was going to be coming back. And he came back a couple hours later, and I think this concert was in Sweden or something like that. And he actually came back about an hour and a half later, and he finished the performance with a broken leg. And this really reminds me of ice hockey as well, where a lot of players, and that's why the culture of hockey I really resonate with. Like, people will go off and get their teeth broken, broken nose, puck to the face, all this sort of stuff, but people just end up coming back. And it's a warrior culture, and you almost have to be a warrior in order to become great at whatever your craft is. So I really love this chapter. Another one is Attack the Man Boys. So this kind of exemplifies the feminization of men over the last 70 years, especially in the West, while other parts of the world are going in the opposite direction. So China, for example, is doing I think they're doing like mass masculinity training, how to reduce like feminization of boys now in their curriculum for school, while the West is just going the complete opposite way. And this is actually very detrimental to the relationship between men and women, the feminization of men, because it's not very pretty. a more feminized men. How do I phrase this? These are the type of guys to kind of just stay monotone, not to do anything out in a public space. If they see something going wrong, they will kind of sit back and be a bit more passive. And this has kind of been the way that civilization has gone, at least in the West, over the last 70 years, is a more feminization of men. You can see that in different pulp culture and what's produced now for young kids, especially young guys, and where it's going. And Steph does a great job analyzing this inside of the book. And next one is Men Solve Problems, Video Games Solve Men. Being a former video game addict myself, I really resonated with this chapter as well. And there's so many men that are obsessed with video games. And video games are a complete detrimental for men because of the value systems that's there. So we get instant feedback and instant gratification when we're playing video games. And it doesn't take as long to master playing video games versus other skill sets of playing an instrument, master doing Facebook ads, for example, or master in advertising. Doesn't really matter. What you're trying to perfect with your craft is that video games are much, much quicker, and they release dopamine in men's brains for problem solving. That's why men watch football and sports, and they almost just sit in silence while they're watching it with a bunch of buddies and friends, because they're problem solving inside of their mind. And this is what a lot of men do. And Steph talks about how women really hate it when men play their video games, because it's almost like a waste of time, because the majority of people who are playing video games, they're not making any money from it. And it really is sucking in your time. It might not be the biggest money spender compared to other such addictions like gambling and drugs and stuff, but it sucks away your time, which is your most valuable resource. And he goes over so much different math and analytics inside there, which is really great to see over. All right, so I'm going to speed this up a little bit. I can honestly talk about this book for ages and ages and ages, but for time's sake, let's keep it under wraps for the next 3 chapters. Keep it under 5 minutes. So the second part of this book that I absolutely love this part of this book. It's my favorite part. Every single chapter here is incredibly invaluable, and there's so much great information inside of it. And yeah, I would read this part of the book like several times. And if I could put every single chapter on here. But let's focus on 3 chapters just for now. And first one being how to live your life with purpose and give women what they really want. This is a great, great chapter. And it's a little misogynistic when you see the title of it. But in reality, it's just about perfecting your craft as a man and not to women chase, and not to be distracted by women. And women really gravitate towards men who are fulfilling their purpose and are mastering their craft, which is one of the reasons why I've been in a very long-term relationship, because my girlfriend sees me all the time trying to perfect my craft, perfect my advertising agency, my training business, my consulting business. She sees me perfecting it. And so that's why we've stayed together for so long, because she sees my long-term vision, and I love her for it. Second part of it, second chapter that I want to cover here is why manipulation and pickup artistry never work in the long run. Great chapter, especially for you single guys out there. It really, it screws up the psyche of men. Yeah, it's not good for anyone in the long run, especially for men, for pickup artistry, even though it's almost down to a science for pickup artistry. But in the long run, if you watch the movie Hitch, it doesn't really go well. And lastly is pornography. And pornography is used as a weapon of war against men, especially now with the prevalence of free pornography, in order to keep men sedated and all that sort of stuff. It's very insightful information here, and yeah, definitely worth the read. Next part is religion, God, and the new gods of men, money, and government. So 3 chapters that stuck out to me here. New God, money, the economic genocide of the middle class. Talks about getting off the gold standard, and how a job at McDonald's, a full-time job at McDonald's, 40 hours a week, working at McDonald's, in today's money from the late 1960s, if you had a job working full-time at McDonald's, would actually be in today's money the 26th highest income earner in the United States today. And that includes a whole bunch of college education, getting into debt slavery, all that sort of stuff, just to get a lot of these jobs, where
the value of money has just been deteriorated over time, and how the dollar has almost lost like 99% of its value over the last 100 years. Really great read. Next one is Native American genocide. I really resonated with this because it talks the differences between the Canadian system of genocide versus the American system of genocide, and the subversion tactics that are currently being used today on the West is what the Canadians and the British used on the First Nations community, the Native Americans in Canada. And I really resonate with this chapter because I have a Métis background. I've learned a lot about what went on over the last 400, 500 years in North America, and the subversion and the literal genocide of great stories and great people and whole tribes. Like, it's honestly really disgusting. I'm really happy that Steph put this in here, because this is what happens when you trust the government too much. They end up not having a great track record. And lastly, in this part is New God, Science, and Worthless Academia. My girlfriend can talk for hours and hours and hours about how a lot of the academics, like, she got a degree about like last year or so, she got a degree 4 years at a prestigious university, and how a lot of it was just worthless communist socialist crap that was pelted into her brain throughout that time. And she would just come home and complain about it all the time. But that's a great read as well. And last part is Politics, a System of Organized Hate and the Extinction of the West. The world belongs to warrior culture, so you can see where the world is going right now, and who's starting to lead the charge with that. China, Russia, parts of Africa as well, the Middle East, all warrior cultures compared to the West right now. Extinction, the Obsolescence of Men, great work in here as well. Talks about how men have literally just been replaced. And all of the jobs that used to be for men have now been catered with women and all that sort of stuff. And it kind of asks the question, like, what's the point of men at the end of the day? All right, so even with me going fast, I still can't even go over everything. But yeah, extension, the obsolescence of men. Yeah, it's like how women don't really need men anymore, and men don't really need women anymore. It talks a lot about the sex robots, as well as women becoming equal and all that sort of stuff. And it really dives deep into that men and women throughout time have been reciprocal. So not an equal society, but reciprocal, kind of like yin and yang, which are two not even parts, but they're both kind of in that same synchronicity. And how the media, mainstream media, as well as pop culture, all that sort of stuff right now in the West has really perverted that natural way of life that the West has been living in the last 500, 600 years since the Renaissance, and how it's really confused a lot of people. So yeah, it's absolutely a great chapter in there. And lastly is Women in the Fall of Man, the creator of men and the destroyer of men, all women. And yeah, that's also a really good chapter. It talks about how civilization really starts, and then where it ends up after it becomes a democracy, and then once it comes back down to tyranny, monarchy, all that sort of stuff. It's a really great work. And yeah, that pretty much covers a lot of this book. I really wish I could get into more details on these chapters, but obviously, time's sake, I don't want to waste your time anymore. But yeah, if you enjoy this content, let me know down in the comments if you've actually read this book before. I wholeheartedly recommend this book for anyone, men, women, doesn't really matter, especially if you live in the Western world, so Europe, North America. This is a very important book to read. It came out in around 2018, 2019. Stefan Aarnio actually passed away in May of 2020, and he predicted in 2018, 2019 that there would be a great event in 2020 or 2021, and you can kind of see the state of the world right now. The most oppressive societies right now. I'm down in Mexico. I've been down in Mexico for a few months now. A lot of the restrictions have been there hasn't really been that many restrictions for what's going on in the world today compared to, say, Canada. When I came out from Canada, like, it's literally just has changed so much in only the last year and a half. Right now, as I'm filming this, it's March 28th, 2021, and Canada over the last year has just changed dramatically, not for the better. So yeah, Stefan Aarnio actually predicted this inside of the book, that there would be a big catastrophic event in 2020 or 2021, and look what happened. So yeah, hard times create strong men. I wholeheartedly recommend this book, and like I mentioned, let me know down in the comments if you've read this book before or if you've read similar books of Stefan Aarnio. Always curious to know. If you like this type of content, please give me a thumbs up. Helps out with the algorithm, gets this information out to more people, because I think a lot of people should read this book. This is a very powerful book. And if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to the channel. I've got a whole host of different advertising as well as marketing and consulting videos coming out for you in the future. And once again, my name is Evan Gilbert, and I'm happy for you to be on this journey with me. So I wish you a great rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next video.